Hey there, welcome back. I'm Nicole. Today we are continuing my idea to outline writing journey. So it's kind of an outlining vlog, but we're not even close to the outlining portion right now. This is more like the trying to figure out what the heck this story is. And I'm using the Anatomy of Story, as well as the Story Grid by Sean Coyne and that entire website universe to help me do this. So I'm going to take you through kind of the steps that I'm doing and how I'm supplementing this with the Story Grid. If there's anything I talk about in the Story Grid that you don't understand or you're like, what the heck is that? I really suggest you check out my intro to the Story Grid video, I think it's called, and I have a PDF. You don't even have to watch the video, but there's like a PDF underneath it, Google link, that'll bring you to a PDF in Google Drive, and I've sort of listed out all of my suggestions for the podcast as well as the links to the website that are the best ones to get started. So I know I'm going to talk about genre, so just go find the PDF and click on the genre article and it will make a lot of sense. And I love how StoryGrid does genre. It's one of my favorite things about it. So anyways, we're getting right into it. The story that I'm working on today is my project musical. The premise is, when a once beloved student returns to her art school after a mysterious absence, she must become the school's best director to prove herself and redeem her image. So I left off in the last video at, oh dear God, step 5 in the Anatomy of Story. So I just did the designing principle. That was rough. Go check it out. I'll link it up there and down below as well. And then just determining my best character, which I already knew. Her name's Charlotte, or Char. Okay, that brings me on to step number 6. Get a sense of the central conflict. So this is basically who fights who over what. Weirdly, this took me a second. I have a whole bunch of stuff written down. It started as Char fights rival in exclamation capital letters over prestige, and it ends up being Char fights her school over who is perceived to be the most talented student. I don't know if it's her school or really her rival. The external one is Char fights rival over a spot in a prestigious directing festival, but what they're really fighting about is their status amongst their classmates. Thus, why they're fighting about who's the most talented student. We're still in chapter 1, so I'm going to say that that's fine. The next part is a single cause and effect pathway. So this says, every organic story has a single cause and effect pathway. A leads to B, which leads to C, all the way to Z. To figure it out based on the basic action that your character takes from the premise. So my character's basic action is that she becomes a director, or she directs a show. She directs Antony and Cleopatra. Oh God, okay. So I never actually defined a single cause and effect pathway. That's funny. Okay. I just identified the basic action, which is that she becomes a director. And then I moved on. I feel like I know what the single cause and effect pathway is. I think it's very clear for this story, much clearer than my older ones, so we're just gonna move on and pretend that I actually wrote that down. All right, number 8 is identify the character's possible character change. This is when I took the Anatomy of Story, I closed it, and I pulled out my laptop and I dove into the Story Grid. So I've known for a long time that I wanted the character change to be redemption. So Char starts off as a has-been, I suppose, is that the correct term? A has-been at her school because of her mysterious absence and all that stuff, and the reason that she left, she kind of messed up a lot right before she disappeared, and so she went from being the best student at the school, everyone thought she was super talented, to everyone being she really messed up and now she's weird. So she's trying to regain her status at the school. So originally, redemption. So I originally thought it was redemption. Now how the Story Grid maps things out, there were kind of 2 possibilities. There was a status story, and then there was a morality story. So a morality story is where they put the subgenre redemption, which is what I thought my story was. A morality story, or redemption story, begins in damnation and ends in success. Or it begins in the middle and ends high. So the value that it turns on, it goes from selfishness over here, really bad, to putting a single person or a group of people ahead of yourself. So it's literally like selfishness to selflessness is the more morals that they say that turns on. And the general controlling idea or theme is good triumphs when the protagonist sacrifices worldly selfish values in favor of the needs of others. That's their redemption story. And I read that and I was like, I don't know if this is a redemption story. So then I looked into the status story, and the value sort of spectrum of the status story goes from selling out and failure to success. And the controlling idea for this one is success results when a person is true to their values, whether or not they obtain a higher social status. And I did some mulling around, I thought about it, I dove deep, I thought about the kinds of stories that they presented as examples of each. And I realized that my story is actually a status story, not a redemption story. So it is status sentimental. Oh, I got an email. Examples of status sentimental stories are Brooklyn, Annie, The Secret Garden, Puzzle, which I've never seen. And so that whole crazy thing brought me to understanding what the character change is. It has to go from failure, she's not selling out, which is the negation of the negation. She has to go from failure to success. I can do that, right? And performance genre fits really well with that because it also goes from like nothing to trying to get success. So they're really well intertwined. Okay, so getting back to what Anatomy of Story says about character change versus what StoryGrid says, the basic action should be the one that forces the character to deal with their weakness and their change. So the Anatomy of Story suggests you outline possible weaknesses that relate to your basic action and then possible changes that are the exact opposite. Okay, her character change. She starts as kind of an outcast. She feels a lot of guilt and shame. She is withdrawn and she cares desperately what other people think about her. She is desperate to improve her social status. She's very much fighting for that. That is her goal. She has this goal in mind and she is fighting towards that. It's kind of like I am going to fix this, I'm going to get where I once was, or bust type train. And her changes, she changes into a confident leader who's secure in her talent. She's forgiven herself for her past transgressions and she's taken back her power to sort of control her own narrative versus trying to manipulate or change what other people think of her. And this is all related to the fact that she becomes a director because she's directing Antony and Cleopatra. So we're going to have to dig sort of into Cleopatra's character, and she's meant to be kind of a foil. She ends up falling on her sword. So through the combination of the story grid and this, it makes sense. At the end, she's learned not to rely on others for her self-worth. She forgives herself. I don't think maybe she wins the competition, maybe she doesn't, I haven't decided, but everybody is impressed by her. She has new friends and she's sort of regained not the same place, but a different, still good place that comes from her believing in herself and being secure in herself. Did that sound like a self-help book? Maybe. Okay, just to add on to that, another thing that I did for the character's possible change is Friedman's framework, which I love. There's a StoryGrid article on it, but it's not like created by StoryGrid. They use it in how they analyze movies at the beginning of the Roundtable podcast. And it's like, who's the main character? What are they like in the beginning in terms of their like willpower, worldview, and status? And then what are they like at the ending? So I really believe in character-driven story. So like my possible character change is like 4 pages and my single cause and effect pathway is 1 line. So, you know. I really combined the 3 resources of internal genre, the Anatomy of Story, weakness, basic action, and character change, and Friedman's framework in that step. Step number 9, according to the Anatomy of Story, is figure out the hero's possible moral choice. This one seemed pretty obvious to me, just kind of like organically. I rewrote the controlling idea of the internal genre according to StoryGrid, which is success results when a person is true to their values, whether or not they obtain higher social status. So clearly her moral choice has to be about between choosing her values and increasing her social status. So her moral choice is there's going to be some situation where she has to choose between winning the competition, doing something that's winning the competition, and doing something that is like sacrificing her integrity or her artistic integrity. That's going to be kind of the choice at the end. She's going to be presented with a situation where she could win if she did this, but she's not going to do it because she's having integrity. And she's learned that value comes from within and not from other people viewing you as very talented. Yeah, this is gonna be great. And then step number 10 in the anatomy of story is gauge the audience appeal. I've got to tell you, I had already decided to write this, and nobody is appealed to it, I mean, that kind of sucks, but also I'm 100% writing this for myself. But anyways, I do think it's appealing. There are a lot of artsy people who like to read. There are a lot of theater kids and art kids and English kids who I think would really enjoy this. The one worrying element might be that Shakespeare will kind of be in the background, but it's Antony and Cleopatra, and everybody loves Antony and Cleopatra. There's all the mythology around them. It's not like I chose Richard the Third. Is that a play? I think that's a play. I didn't choose that one. Okay. It also takes on a lot of issues that are relevant now, like image and perception and the arts and women and images in media and stuff like that, social media, etc. So I said check mark, and that brought me to the end of chapter 1 of the Anatomy of Story. The very last thing that I want to talk about before I sign off is that I figured out the masterworks for my project in this stage. That is a StoryGrid conception, I guess, of works that are in the same genre as you, that you look to not model your story after, but to learn about the genre and the best practices and how you can be innovative. So my 2 masterworks are The King's Speech, which I've seen numerous times and I love, and also Rocky, which I have not seen, but I know it has the same internal and external genre as I have. So performance genre and internal genre of status sentimental. I also think that, what's it called? Test, no. Oh, the computer guy in World War II. Oh, I'm so blanking. The Imitation Game, that's what it's called. Damn it! I should know that. I'm a computer engineer. So the Turing test, right? He was the one who is the founding father of artificial intelligence and who came up with the whole idea of a computer acting like a human and not being able to tell the difference. Anyways, the Turing test, I think, because I think it's performance in that they had to crack the code. I'm just not sure what the internal genre is. I might have to watch it again. Yay, I love that movie so much. But those are my masterworks that I'm going to continue looking for and referencing throughout this whole process. I will not be StoryGrid spreadsheeting them, but I might make notes about them. So if you're interested in hearing some analysis on those stories or one of those stories, let me know, and I will be doing it anyways. So if you want to hear it, I'll just share it with you. From now on, hopefully these will be a little bit, these vlogs are going to be a little bit less in depth, less me going through the whole process. Unless you like that, then I can do that. That brings me to the end of this part of this little idea to outline journey. Thank you so much for joining me. I would love to hear about how you guys tend to outline. Have you ever tried the Anatomy of Story? What does this weird process of combining resources sound like to you? Do you do that? Let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you.